Second, Owen. Adoption of the minutes of the April 23, 24 Heritage Commission meeting. Any comments about the minutes? Mover to for approval of the minutes, the Heritage Commission meeting held April 23, 2024 be adopted. Owen? Yeah, is that Owen? Is that your?
Yeah.
Owen second. All in favor? Carried. We actually I didn't call on favor for the approval of the agenda, so I'm going to say one by one, all in favor? Carried. Let's make sure we're all rusty since the last meeting. Public comments, I don't believe there's anybody here.
I have no public.
Right, so moving on to council referrals. Snug Cove Design Guidelines update, and we have Daniel Martin here to speak to that. Thanks, Daniel.
I'm gonna ask you to stop screen sharing so Daniel can do his
Right,
presentation,
yeah, sure.
rather than just kick you off. Thank you. I guess, do we want to quickly welcome Ali back then, I guess, while Daniel's waiting? Welcome back to the commission. Good to see you again.
I should mention for the record too, and maybe to add to the list, Ali is also volunteered to be on the Heritage Inventory Subcommittee.
Nice.
She's the new name on there as well. I think we have one person, I think Andrew wasn't able to be here today. He's out of town.
So I'm here today. I have a referral from council for a project called looking at updating our Snug Cove design guidelines. So by way of background, our official community plan has what's called a development permit area. In fact, two for the Snug Cove area. So there's a village revitalization development permit area, and that is for the properties marked in pink on the map. And then there's what's called a village periphery development permit area, and those are the orange properties on the map. Similar versions existed prior to 2011, but this is our current one as in the current OCP. And then what the OCP lays out is that the development must follow guidelines that are found in the land use bylaw. And applications for development permits in this area are reviewed by our advisory design panel. And then, as with all development permits, delegation of approval is delegated to our CAO, who makes the approval.
Question.
Yes.
Why is I'd assume that the library site would be included in, because the guidelines actually refer to it as the basis for the design guideline aesthetic.
I don't know the history. I often have that same question. So I know, like, just even looking at the library property and the records, like there were development permits issued for it in the 90s under the Islands Trust. So obviously at some point it was included in a Snug Cove, form and character development permit. But the 2011 OCP explicitly did not include it. Yeah.
I wonder if there's a call to look into that and maybe add it if there was.
And I do think as part of the OCP review process, part of that is looking at, like what are the DPs in the current OCP, what makes sense to carry forward. And it does seem like, logical inclusion. I don't know the history, and I don't know if some of the thinking was, well, the municipality owned it. So
maybe that's
obviously we will be, ensuring the highest quality.
And then the design for the hearth and the commons was sensitive to the design of the library anyway, regardless of.
Yeah, so when we did for the Hearth and Hills Commons project, staff, we did refer it to the design panel for comment, even though it wasn't in the guidelines. We referred it thinking that, like, well, given that it's such a prominent location and is the sort of basis for the design guidelines, we want to ensure that any development follows that.
Right.
So our current design guidelines were written in 1985 by the advisory design panel, and they are adopted as Schedule E of the land use bylaw. And around about 2019, I think, we started a project to update the guidelines. And so now we have guidelines here in draft form. The updated guidelines say that they intend to affirm an arts and crafts approach to development, encouraging creative design, complementary aesthetics, and retention of distinct development character. So one of the things the design panel has worked from is like the current design guidelines are very clear in sort of the overall intent of the arts and crafts village feel for Stump Cove. What they often lack is like clarity for people who want to build a building to know like, okay, what exactly does the design panel look like? What are the design guidelines looking for? So the design panel has had challenges, I think, working with various new buildings of saying, well, we don't feel that this project maybe like upholds the intent of the design guidelines, but without necessarily like concrete things to point to. And so trying to look for an updated guideline. So the updated guidelines would have 7 overall objectives, so sort of big categories, and each with a mix of mandatory and optional objectives. So it is then an applicant would come forward and you have to say like, well, we meet these and we don't meet these objectives. These are the ones that we've met and these are the ones we haven't met, and maybe some of them don't apply, but to give the design panel something to work with when they evaluate proposals. So 7 objectives, artistic and rural character, community oriented, human scale design, pedestrian experience, heritage highlights, natural park ambiance, and parking flexibility. Yeah, and so each of these have a mix of objectives within them that look at mandatory and optional ones. And so in particular, referred to the Heritage Commission was wanting to look at this number 5 heritage elements. But maybe I'll just go to the end and I'll come back to these ones. So next steps when we came to council, what we recommended is we hold an open house on the proposed guidelines. So we'll hold that in the fall. We'll invite owners in Stump Cove and the general public to open houses about them. Typically we'll do an in-person and a Zoom open house. When we came to council, we recommended consultation with the Heritage Commission specifically on this objective 5 and the heritage pieces. Then we would be preparing an amendment bylaw to make the change to the land use bylaw, come back to council for a first reading of the bylaw, at which point it would get referred to the Islands Trust, giving notice of the amendment bylaw and potentially more consultation at that after that first reading stage for a second and third reading and then adoption of the bylaw. So yeah.
Question. Sorry to interrupt. So is this on the agenda today because it has been referred to the
It has been
commission?
referred.
Oh, it has been referred.
From council, yeah. We met on the July 8th, I think was the meeting that it had. So it's like hot off the press, but yes, this has been referred. And so the mandatory heritage element or objective is that if the site hosts any place listed on the Bowen Island Community Code Register, the proposed treatment of such place shall be presented to the Heritage Commission. The proposal shall work to retain aspects of any remaining historical elements. And then 3 optional objectives being around retaining an Indigenous advisor on the project to implement elements that reflect Indigenous culture, integrating visible heritage building details reminiscent of local heritage building, or provide number 5D, provide public educational signage about heritage on or near the lot. So those are the 4, those 4 elements in that heritage objective. So that was really what I had to present. I'm just open to hear from the Heritage Commission any thoughts on this objective or really the overall scope of the project and the design guidelines.
So these are just the high level objectives, and then there'll be detailed changes throughout the guidelines that will bring it up to date, or will the guidelines be essentially the same wording?
The guideline essentially the same wording, like the guideline essentially lists what you see here. And there's sort of example photos in the guideline document itself, but essentially that would be the extent of it. The design panel has worked, over the years we've gone longer objectives and then they get reduced to the synthesis. So sort of that struggle between like how prescriptive we want to be in the guidelines versus the design panel doesn't really want to like restrict people from having, interesting or different ways of achieving the same objective. So trying to keep it at the sort of intent level, saying this is what we're trying to achieve. But like if people designing buildings have different ways to reach that, they're open to it as well.
Just one suggestion is that reading through it, you might want to replace non-gender neutral language in the 1980s. Things have kind of progressed socially since 1985, and there's stuff that say, for instance, if he applies for development or something like that. So a lot of use the he pronoun, and something you guys might have taken a look at.
Sorry, that's in the 1985 document or in the updated draft document?
Well, I didn't see the updated draft. I saw the 85. Link was the 85, I think.
It was under council.
Well, I might have just meant. Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe that's already.
Okay, there'd definitely be any of those remain and we want to
Yeah.
update, yeah.
Okay. So any comments from? Question member?
And I'll say too, it's like this 5A preservation, right, is about, if there's a place that's listed on the Bowen Island Community Heritage Register, essentially what it's trying to do is saying it would get referred to the Heritage Commission as part of that process. But when I look at the map, right, I think I see in the report, like I only see like things that are on the Heritage Register, and I think my report said it's like the cenotaph
Right.
is within it, and
Is it?
yeah, because it's on the.
Yeah.
It's right in here, and the museum and archives building is that in the register?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Higgins Cabin is on it.
Okay.
It says /museum. Maybe what I did prior to the meeting, but didn't get into the agenda, been working on it, is 3 additional recommendations related to 5A, and I guess 5C. And maybe I could screen share, or I could just read them. There's only 3. And they build on what's in. I've shared them with Daniel already. So one, that objective 5A of the draft updated Snug Cove design guidelines be amended with the addition of the following text, and this would be the last bit of it, and ensure that new elements are sympathetic in matching design and finishes. So if you build another building on the site, or if you add stuff, that it should be sympathetic to the stuff that you're saving, the heritage asset. 2, that the draft updated Snug Cove design guidelines be amended to add the following provision: the massing, design, and finishes of a proposal for a site adjacent to a heritage register site should be sympathetic to the character defining elements of the registered site. So if you're next door, so if somebody builds, well, something right next to the Higgins Cottage or something like that, or if we add sites to the register in the code. Let's say it's, the Yellow Cottage, for example, something built next to it should be contextual. And then the third, and presumably that would allow the commission to review the proposal for the adjacent site as well. And 3, that the commission continue to be consulted regarding updates to the Snug Cove design guidelines. So just trying to make it a little bit more comprehensive. Yes, Melissa.
I'd like to first amendment to 5A. I wondered, it says shall be presented to the Heritage Commission, but that language confused me a little bit. Would referred not be more apt?
Keeping,
Presented.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means in an municipal context. Because referred implies that the commission looks at it and gives feedback, whereas presented seems like a one-way.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And then the other thing that I wondered is that, well, a kind of broad question really, but it's only to refer things that are on the register, which I understand why that's been chosen, but and then it says so should work to retain aspects of any remaining historical elements. And then the heritage details is about integrating visible heritage building details reminiscent of local heritage buildings, but it seems like the wording only preserves things that are on the register and nothing else of heritage is preserved, whereas the intent of the whole of the design guidelines is to, in inverted commas, retain or actually manufacture a kind of heritage feel for Snug Cove. Should we not be working to retain as much heritage as we can, regardless as to whether it's on the register or not? And that doesn't necessarily have to be done, Andrew would be cross, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done according to, heritage conservation best practices. If we're just asking people to make sure that, they have a lovely porch and they could keep hold of it and we don't have any power to enforce it. So, just to encourage people to retain what they have. So I just kind of generally felt that the language suggests that only registered properties should be conserved and that everything else is manufactured, whereas I think it we could change the language so that all heritage, that owners give consideration to retaining, conserving any heritage aspects of their buildings.
You know, I stumbled on that too. And one of the reasons I didn't go there is some of the back and forth that Daniel and I have had by email about what staff can legally do, even to document non-registered sites unless they're in development permit area, because this isn't a development permit area. Yeah.
Just be the chance to do it. I think that's a good. But like, I think that the advisory design panel is sort of the mindset, they're like, well, we don't focus on heritage, we don't know it as much, we want to refer to the Heritage Commission. And then it's like, okay, well, we'll trigger a referral to the Heritage Commission, and they're like, well, if it's on the register, then we've said it's important, then we would refer it.
Right.
But you're right, there's sort of the in-between of like, well, there's heritage elements
Yes.
on existing buildings that would say, well, we want to, rather than just saying you're gonna build things that look like heritage things, but you want to keep,
Yes.
yeah.
So there's two ways we could phrase something like that. We could either say, potential heritage assets, to be general about it, or we could say heritage assets listed on the heritage inventory.
No, I think it should just be anything.
Yeah,
I don't think it needs to be documented. If you have something that you recognize as has heritage value, then this should encourage you to retain it. It should.
Yes.
I feel like the guidelines should explicitly encourage you to retain it. Like 80% at least of these guidelines is optional. It seems to me that there is no cost to encourage people to retain any heritage aspects that they have.
So that means that the Heritage Commission should be, any proposal that comes before the municipality for a site within the guidelines area should be referred to the commission for comment.
Not
For potential.
necessarily. I mean, for example, it says.
Well, why not?
Well, because then it does impose an additional slight regulatory burden. You have to refer it to the commission, you've got to wait for the commission to meet and make a decision. It seems like the tone of most of these guidelines is that this is an optional encouragement. So they always could ask us, and maybe that could be suggested, but I don't know that we need to impose anything, nor that the people who are working on the guidelines would accept that.
I'm just.
But I mean, it could say, and we encourage you to refer it to the Heritage Commission for feedback.
Right, so there's the wording.
The other thing I wondered is whether there should be some suggestion or encouragement of people to seek a, what is it called, a heritage revitalization something.
like a agreement,
Yeah, like the people with moon wings.
yeah.
That could
Which
be.
isn't in the SNOCO guidelines, but yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah, well, it could be, right, it could be, could be, that people could, when they read the guidelines, if somebody's trying to develop within that, EPA, they could read these guidelines and say, oh, I hadn't heard of that, revitalization agreement, maybe that will enable me to retain this feature. That makes my drive too narrow, or my fence too close to the road, or I don't know what. I don't know if this is really the appropriate place to mention that, but
I don't think it is, because it's confined to the Snug Cove guidelines, but could we screen share 5A, 5C, because I don't have it in my draft amendments.
Sorry, Steph, can you, Teams right now is just up on the screen. Steph,
Mine?
I think it's that computers.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So. So this, so 5A, site hosts any places listed on the community heritage register or has potential heritage value. We just inserted that, I mean, the more pithy the insertion, you know. So if we just insert that, or, you know, or it has potential heritage value, or is a potential heritage asset, maybe.
I don't think it can be in 5A because 5A is mandatory. I think it would have to be.
So we make a new one, like if
Yeah.
that is about preservation for the Heritage Register, it's like it'll be
Yes.
referred to the Heritage Commission,
Yes,
full stop.
and
And then
then
it's like,
5B is
Maybe a new 5B.
Yeah.
and bump everything down one.
is about kind of like 5C heritage detail, but more it's about,
But again, 5C deals with heritage register buildings, right?
well, 5C is more about like, your new building should have details that are reminiscent of heritage buildings, whereas I think this would be a new 5B that talks about the goal is to retain existing heritage building details. Or something like that, heritage value, or something worded like that, is that
Yeah.
where it's saying like this, you know, the building that houses the Science Cafe is not on the community heritage register, but has heritage value to Snug Cove, and so we're looking to retain those elements.
Yeah.
Rather than like say, well, the new building should have some of the trim to remind you of the old one, it's like, well, but
We want to
better
keep as
than
much
that.
of the old one as
the
possible.
old one, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we want to try to craft wording for that now, or do we leave that to?
Them to do that, but I guess we have to give them sufficient direction that they actually understand the point.
So I had. Alright, so I had Peter's,
You want me to share what I've got going?
oh, sure, so I had Peter's here, just added change.
Okay.
5A change presentation to refer, I think it's refer.
I kind of ripped yours apart a little bit to get Melissa's to fit in there differently, so,
Alright, go for it.
yeah. Got some glasses on and it's. See.
If you turned your screen the other way, you'd get less white light from the window.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, I've just got, that the commission provided the following recommendations regarding objective 5A of the draft Snug Cove Design Guidelines update. Replace presented with referred. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Daniel, do you need more, specificity or just? Is that in 5A?
Yeah.
That's in 5A, and I think,
Get rid of 5A up here, 5. Right?
and ensure that new elements are sympathetic in massing design and finishes, I think was as well, was for 5A.
Yeah.
So that's sort of this bottom one
No,
here?
No, sorry, the one above it.
Okay,
So add ensure that new elements are sympathetic in massive design,
okay, I'll go here.
both changes to 5A.
Okay. Does that work?
And then it was. Yeah, create a new 5B that encourages retention of heritage elements.
Okay, put that down here. Okay,
And then I think the design master finish the approval for site adjacent to heritage register site should be sympathetic. I think that fits with 5C.
okay,
Does that make sense to people? Because that's the one that's about like when you build something new, you are integrating heritage building designs. And so this is saying as well, if you're next to a heritage site, you should be sympathetic to it. But yeah.
sorry, did you want me to add something with the words you just said?
No.
So this
It-
crossed out bit can go.
Because that's what
That was just.
That's what we're saying 5B is, but I don't know if if the commission wants to add more. Or if that's.
Otherwise, you might have to have 5A1 and 5A2 or something like that, or.
So should you include some of the crossed out bit in that?
That 5B,
Yeah.
Which,
Would you like?
well, even the part about even if the assets are not
Yeah, just-
listed
just
in the community heritage register.
Okay,
Otherwise, it reads heritage elements, if we assume the heritage elements are just heritage elements of registered sites.
in order to ensure that heritage aspects.
But you need that.
Oh, you don't need that, sorry.
Take part of that across the strike through,
Okay,
just like maybe the first.
that encourages. Property owners to conserve heritage aspects.
Yeah.
Of their. Properties.
purchase potential heritage aspects. Sorry,
Elements.
What do we-
Elements of their heritage of their properties.
there we don't have properties.
Whether or not they are listed on the community heritage register first.
Okay,
Yeah.
That'll do her.
how about existing heritage elements? Is that helpful?
They would be existing, wouldn't they?
But I guess that's clear, because I was trying to differentiate that from building new stuff that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel.
Sorry to be snide. Less is more, according to Corbusier. Yes.
Existing rental properties, whether or not they're listed in being heritage, right? And then we have the new bit in section C.
Is there in these guidelines, is there, I don't see, there's an appendix, colors of the code. But it would be nice if there was also an appendix that included like, you can always talk to the Heritage Commission. Speak to your friendly planning staff about ways that you can work with the building guidelines to be able to, yeah. Is it, I mean, it's kind of implied in the parking. You guys can see inside in the parking section that you know that
Yeah.
these parking rules are somewhat potentially flexible.
Right. Yeah,
It's kind of implicit, but not explicit. I mean, maybe if there was an appendix that kind of included a couple of hints like that,
Right.
with the parking also.
yeah,
Yeah, because the intention is that the guidelines are flexible, right? That not every building has to look exactly the same as.
yeah.
Yeah, but also like, what can you find out about that? Like, it, I don't know, if it just feels like you're a bit on your own, if you owned a single small property in a cove. And you
Yeah.
just have these guidelines, like, where do you go next? It must, seems like it might be nice to,
Yeah, and I think I might even do it like at the survey about how to use these guidelines.
Right,
Maybe
yeah.
that's where we would be.
yeah,
in. Like I know at various times with this project, we've had different iterations and sometimes it's been very like intro heavy.
right.
Just been, and at one point it sort of was like a point system that you had to like,
So,
you know, the elements had points and you got a certain number of points and then I think that the design panel felt that that ended up with almost like very formalistic, you end up with a building they didn't actually like, but they're like, well, technically you got all the points for all these like,
Yeah.
you know, one-off things, and so you got the points, you get a building, they're like, well, we don't really want that, we kind of want a little
Like
like.
play the game, the points game.
Yeah, exactly, they're like, we want to be able to view a building holistically and say, well, you've met these guidelines, you haven't met these, but we see what you're doing, with your whole building,
right.
so. And then I think too, I'd probably just hyperlink even to the Heritage Register and the Heritage Commission or something, so it's like. I can easily see it there.
Yeah.
Did you want me to add anything about that conversation in this or? So looking at this last bullet, including something in how to use guidelines?
Yeah, just like additional information. Or include additional information.
For property owners or applicants.
Looking to apply or something.
Oh, included, so this is a direction to you about the.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah, it's not the text, but, yeah.
okay, thank you. Additional information. Digital heritage information, yeah? For applicants. Okay, and then I added up here, Peter, this yellow bit, because I think we have the word sympathetic, but it's hanging there, like sympathetic to what?
Well,
So-
that was my next question, is what do you mean by sympathetic? Is, you don't mean, Peter, that it should be like, it should look like, right, sympathetic? I
Well,
mean,
sometimes the term used is contextual design. Where, you know, you've got. A certain, you know, heritage design features and that the new features don't have to look exactly like those features, but they should be contextual. And sometimes if it's an adjacent structure, maybe it has a pitched roof rather than a flat roof. It might have certain kind of siding. That's a kind of certain kind of massing. So, sometimes it's called neighborly design as well. So sympathetic is often a term that's used, but another word that gets the same.
Owen, do you have any language that you can help us with all of your,
Synthetic comes to mind
okay?
to me as well as what I would use.
Would you say sympathetic to her? Does my addition make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
because does that? Like that you couldn't build something that's very different and modern? Because I kind of balk at that a little bit.
Sympathetic to me means it's compatible.
Well, there's another word we could use, compatible.
Okay. Pop quiz compatible with?
With,
Yeah.
with heritage elements, I would say aesthetics. So we could do aesthetic.
We've used elements, we've used aspects.
Yeah. It should be with existing heritage.
Really?
Well, otherwise it could be any heritage, I'm adding existing. Otherwise, it's any heritage aesthetics anywhere. Yeah, I mean, that does it for me. We can flog this to death and spend the whole meeting. Last meeting, we went in a
But
half
the thing
hour.
is, I don't really have a problem with the 5A sympathetic, actually.
Oh,
And I think synthetic is probably best than compatible, sorry. But I'm just balking at that the neighboring building also has to be,
sorry, I'm not just synthetic.
okay, so I don't like the idea that everything's fake heritage.
We're not talking about fake heritage.
But I'm not, if we're talking about building, if we're talking about the neighboring building. That it has to be synthetic, I mean, I kind of know what you mean, but I also. Kind of don't exactly, and it's a very small area, and there are not very many buildings. There are not very many opportunities to build.
This is in a mandatory section or optional section?
They're all in the optional, it's 5C.
So sorry, so step sympathetic is again in the third bullet point.
Yeah, I'm
5C.
talking about 5C.
So
Oh.
that would be an optional.
That's just I mean, maybe everybody else on the commission disagrees with me, I just, personally, I just kind of.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have some sympathy for that too, because, you know, the Copper Moon Spirits Building, some people might say it's probably controversial. Maybe it's one of the reasons that this exercise is happening right now, which is a little on the boxy side and has a big sign that. But so, do we want to be in a situation where, someone could never build something like that? I thought that was somewhat refreshing.
Gone on Street View to look at the copper kettle, and it's got pitched roofs, so I think it is sympathetic to the design aesthetic. It's not incongruous.
It's actually got a flat roof, but with a pitched fronting part that projects out that hides the flat roof in behind.
It's
So,
like,
yeah.
right. So as long as that
Yeah.
conversation gets had, I think it's probably a good thing.
At least it puts it on the table.
Yeah.
And I don't think we intend to make everything look like some kind of Disneyland Whistler Village kind of idea, the living code. So I agree with the concern, but I don't agree with taking it out. And the other reason I thought it should be in is it could be that the adjacent development actually is a site we feel has some heritage value on the commission. If it gets referred to us as an adjacent property, we might be able to make comments on the retention of the heritage asset on the adjacent property. So it expands slightly the kind of stuff that we might be able to comment on through the back door. Given that right now there's only two sites within the guideline area, Cenotaph and the Higgins Cabin Museum, which is up the road. So maybe that's a question for Daniel. If there is a provision that says if it's next door to proposed heritage site, that would give the commission. So it's referred to the commission because it's next door to the heritage listed site. The commission's mandate, I guess, is to comment on the design aspects of it, whether it's sympathetic or not. But also through the back door, we could probably say, hey, by the way, this property actually has a heritage, potential heritage asset on it. Should we not be talking about how we can preserve some of that asset? Would give us that opportunity, would it not?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we have it referred to the Heritage Commission when it's on the Heritage Register and otherwise not.
Yeah.
Like I think about, in terms of realistic, so as it currently stands, right? It's like, well, the Higgins project, so I guess the property to the north of it came to build, let's say, right, as the logical, next door, so, or I guess the Telus left the island and fell being built on. Those might be ones then where this would be in play. They're adjacent to a site, or they're for a site adjacent to a heritage register site. And so, yeah, what are the expectations of development of that site?
There's a contextual.
Yeah, and if it was a process too, is the expectation that gets referred to the Heritage Commission?
And conversely, on the other side of the Higgins Cottage, there's another fairly old established cottage or house there. So if an application came in for that property, not only is it an opportunity for the commission to say whatever gets built there should be contextual, synthetic to the cabin. But this is actually a site that we think may have heritage values. There's some way to encourage retention of some form of retention of that house.
I think we're just making suggestions, so we shouldn't get too bogged down in it because of each thing being the design people can make their decisions about it, right?
So I don't know if people are okay with the wording as it is now.
Do you want to do a little straw poll on that or something? Is that what they're called?
Do we need one? Does anybody feel?
What does anyone else think?
It shouldn't be that.
Good the way it is.
The way it is. Okay with it? Okay,
Okay,
you're alone in the world. Good for you.
That's often.
Yeah, you tried.
Okay, so can I
I guess,
Yes. I'm just surprised that, views or viewpoints isn't mentioned anywhere at all. Like we're talking about is fabric. And are there any important views of heritage buildings that we might want to protect from third party land toward? There might not be, but I'm just surprised it's
something
not
built that would
mentioned.
block a view. of
Yeah,
the Heritage. Okay.
yeah.
Make an example?
Well, it's more, I'm surprised that in the guidelines, there's no identification of ocean views from within the code, because I would have thought that that would be, although I'm looking around Street View again and there aren't many, they've all been
Yeah.
blocked off already. But, and then extrapolating that into heritage, are there any iconic views of heritage buildings in the Cove that we as a commission are aware of and would like highlighting? And there might not be any. And, we're not gonna, if a building was built on the car park for the library, for example, it would block views of the library as you're coming down the hill. As an example. It's good to have that open space in front of the library as you're coming down the hill. So that would be a view that maybe we would, as a commission, push to keep.
In other words, through a setback, for example, or requiring that any building that was built there was set back
Yeah.
as to not. I noticed there were a couple of view corridors, view cones identified in the guidelines. But I don't think they were protecting the general store.
Yeah, like, so the 1985 version had view cones from essentially the door of the library looking out over the marina parking. And I think there was another one that again was like.
Looking at the old post office location or something down, or
Yeah.
You'll see the traces of old arguments.
Yeah.
yes.
I think you're right, it's like
And those no longer in the updated.
they're no longer in the updated. I mean, I do think, yeah, it's like views of heritage. My mind just, goes to the library building. But I don't know, other than it's like on the site itself. There's almost not that same level of like two levels, you can't view it, like, can you view it from? Anywhere where a building would be blocking it. It's
No,
not
I don't think you
already
can
blocked.
actually, so maybe it's a moot point. I think it's important that you see it, the old general store, as soon as you get off the ferry.
Yeah.
It's almost the first building you see, which is great, and you're obviously not gonna block that view. I just thought, I'd throw it out there in case anyone else, because I don't even know it's on the register, I'm a newbie, but, is the archive on the register? The archive building?
Yeah.
No, anyway, can't think of any other examples. Anyone else?
One suggestion would be like we already have wording that says the massing designs and finishes of a proposal for a site adjacent, or even, and even for on the site, that new elements are sympathetic and massing design and finishes. Doesn't massing imply, or if it doesn't imply positioning? So we could say like the massing of the proposed new development on the site would block important views of the heritage asset. And so maybe that language is sufficient. What do you think, Daniel?
Right, like if the massing is then directly all around the cenotaph, and it's like, okay, well, you're
Yeah.
blocking it.
Yeah.
I guess that would turn into it.
The only other thing my only other comment would be about like what's not included in the DPA, which would be the orchard and Crippen on the other side of the road as well would be the Jones and also the White Cottage, I forget what it's called, the Metro Cottage.
The director's note.
Seaside, yeah, Seaside Cottage.
Should we have a recommendation to look at changes to the boundary?
I think like that could be appropriate. I think what I recommend it's like if the commission wants to adopt this resolution about the guidelines and then make a separate one that's like, as part of the OCP review, you know, council should consider expanding the DPA to include other sites in Sun Cove, including blah, 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 something like that.
That sounds good.
That pink bulge on the map towards along, it looked like it was along Lady Alexandra Boulevard there. Did that not include the orchard cottages or what was that including? That bubble?
Yeah, I don't think, essentially it includes the Union Steamship property.
Oh, okay.
And then there's like a, yeah, it includes the property sort of on Davies Road, like behind the pub. And it includes the like Village Square overflow parking lot. But it doesn't include any of Crippen Park.
Very good.
Very good.
Okay, so we can talk about that DPA one later. We'll look at it yet.
Are we going?
Am
did we
I-
want the view cones
I think
one?
we don't want the view cones one. I'm just trying to, no view
I
cones.
think we thought that it was sufficient to, the
Okay.
language, the language of passing
Okay,
kind of cover.
Still,
But that we, there was the thing about the OCP, a separate
it's a new one.
recommendation.
We're not looking at that one right now.
Not today, you mean?
No, just we're gonna
Oh,
vote
you
on
vote
this
and then, okay.
properly and then we'll move to the
Okay.
next one.
Okay, well then, are we ready? for-
Peter, let's pick someone to read it out. Ellen, can you see it from here, from there?
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
The Heritage Commission provide the following recommendations regarding objective 5 of the draft Snug Cove Design Guidelines update. In section 5A, replace presented to the Heritage Commission with referred and add and ensure that new elements to existing heritage aesthetics in massing, design and finishes. Create a new section 5B that encourages retention of existing heritage elements of properties, whether or not they're listed in the Community Heritage Register. In section 5C, include the massing, design and finishes of a proposal for a site adjacent to a Heritage Register site should be sympathetic to the character defining elements of the Community Heritage Register site. In how to use these guidelines section, include additional heritage information for applicants and that the Heritage Commission recommend the council direct staff to continue to consult the commission regarding updates to the Snug Cove Design Guidelines.
There needs to be a comma, yeah, between massing and design and the quoted in section 5C include, quote, the massing, comma, yes.
Okay.
Otherwise it's massing design.
Make that remember?
So, yeah.
That's okay.
And I know why you did that. I had someone else read it out because the chair just does too much talking. So yes, can I have a mover for those amendments? Be shy. Is a shrug was a move, okay. So Ally and seconder, Helen, since you read them, all in favor? Carried.
Hey,
Yay, congratulations.
yay. And now, Kathy, do you want to read this one out? No.
Does the Heritage Commission want to include, like, do you want to say to include,
But that could be bullets.
like specific parts?
Ooh,
Or you want to say
okay.
you want it to be reviewed?
Okay, so the council include,
So after process, you could put a hyphen and then bullet points below it, indented. Indented is the case maybe. So,
so then we're moving consideration of expanding the boundaries down there?
yeah,
Or-
or you know, to include, we're gonna say to include. Yeah. Okay, the old general store. The Orchard Cottages, Davies Orchard Cottage.
So I quickly, that will.
There's a little quiz on who knows what's already on the
Because
register.
increasingly, the cottages are gonna be integrated into the code. What else?
Decide.
basically it's this.
Oh, Seaside Cottage.
Peter, I don't know if you can see that. Is that way too far away, Peter? Peter, I'm over
Showing
here.
you something.
Is that too far away? Like basically, all of this and all of this should be.
Well, maybe I'm thinking the Boulevard Cottage, which is the one that has the tourist information.
I don't think it, yeah, I think it should just be these whole big white areas. Right, like that's the old general store, there's the Boulevard Cottage, there's Seaside Cottage, there's that Bridal Rail Falls is up here, like this whole thing. And this whole thing should be in the.
Do those have names, Daniel? What she's pointing to, like parcels or lots?
Or, I mean,
There's been a reason it was excluded. I think you're just not expecting anyone to build anything in those areas.
Probably this park,
It's part.
but there's also the baseball field, there's
So it's basically Crippen Park.
Baseball field is Crippen Park. Oh.
The rest of
So
all of Metro Land.
but Davies Road is included, so if, yeah, I guess it was included because it's private property and it could have private applications, whereas the baseball field is Crippen, it's Metro.
is it possible to see that map?
The one that, do you have that, Daniel,
It's
to do
kinda
a
hard
screen
to see it
share?
from here.
but
Or you want to join the Zoom meeting and you can screen share?
I can put, I know which one, but I have a different version.
Okay.
And can you explain what the difference between the revitalization DP area and the periphery DP area? And
The village periphery has guidelines that are not these, that are like 4 points.
Okay.
That are like, you should use native landscaping, you should, I forget, it's like match the character of, so it's much lesser.
So the wider area, Melissa, that you're advocating for is the periphery, would be just to merge the periphery area in the guidelines area?
I think it should be orange.
so are we asking for all the guidelines to be applied, though, or just the heritage ones in this extended area? Because it's giving people a lot of work, like all the footpaths need to be replaced, so there's no asphalt, which is a great idea, by the way, because there's way too much asphalt.
Ah,
But then it gives kind of triples the amount of sidewalk they've got to replace with brick. It's giving people a lot of work.
Well, it's really, there's only two landowners in that area. Delini.
Yes.
And Metric.
Electric.
I'm gonna take the devil's advocate.
Exempt like park maintenance or something, we're not trying to like regulate
Yeah,
their trail standards or something, but it's like,
yeah.
yeah, if they build a new building where the seaside cottage is, then it does go through a design guideline or.
Yeah, I think so, because otherwise, like, potentially they could put, I mean, potentially they could put something like that.
Yeah, I mean, my devil's advocate from my point of view is that the periphery area, if the main intent is to create a village feel right in the cove, and that's predominantly along Lone Island Trunk Road and maybe a little way along, you know, Miller and Dorman and whatever, then how does including something in Crippen Park, you know, and the Dorman Point neighborhoods, it's, you know, it's not really contributing to the village character of the cove. It's close to it, and you wouldn't want a 40-story tower to go up and.
Right,
So you're saying that the Dorman, that's right, because that includes all the Dorman residences. Yeah, you're right, they should either not be in it or they should be village periphery. But I'm just thinking, I mean, maybe, like, I just think that the Crippen Park it obviously should be in there, and so should the old general store. I can see why they left the police station out.
Yeah, I can see the village character along Miller. Because it kind of, it's the gateway into the village and part of Dorman. But I don't see how, you know, the Alder Grove Trail and all those trails and
Do you think they add to the village? I kind of feel like Extremely important.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. Yeah, you're just, you know, you're somewhere else, right? You're not in the village. I don't know, but I do like, I don't know if I can point. I mean, it seems like everything along. Or like here in Cardina, you know, certainly the village character needs to be supported along here. And along here, I mean, these are off the slope, so maybe that's why they were left out. And definitely the orchard cottages. I don't know about all of Oldfest Field, but certainly. Certainly along here and here.
Again, this is
You know, and maybe along here, because there's, you know, there's talk about, you know, integrating. The village into cottage area, so. This is good, so certainly the cottages.
So
I know,
what,
so that's, I mean, that's kind of where I.
You mean the Davies orchard?
The Davies Orchard, yeah, precinct, yeah, because it's really, that really is part of the village.
Is this like,
could it just be a recommendation that they consider including Crippen Park and the village parts of Crippen Park and the Old General Store in the PPA?
That's what I was gonna say, because I guess like this commission is recommending that it be considered.
Yeah.
So you're not actually deciding, but you're
Yeah.
saying that, so in that sense, the unit general works, saying Crippen around Stone Cove should be in the DPA, some element of it, yeah.
Including the Boulevard Cottage, which is just. What would that be? So
Carry
over,
circle.
just over, you know, the carrying.
That one's on the same property as the general store.
So, yeah, so that would be another argument for including. it.
so what is Seaside Cottage? The Boulevard Cottage is the TBI.
Yeah, the Seaside Cottage is the metro one, that's like when you go into that.
It's the
parking
white
lot,
one.
It's the white one.
Right.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that maybe a subcommittee could do some mapping, get something for the OCP review, but it sounds like you've landed on some wording. Do you want me to share this again, the wording part? Oh. So is that, we're not excluding Dormant Point anymore because we've just specified the that is the village area parts, right?
you could say
So
add.
the general store is not in Crippen, so leave it as its own. And then maybe the old general store, the library and the Boulevard Cottage, because they're the same property.
Yeah. Gonna say the same thing.
Sorry, can you say that again?
The old general store and the same line, the library and Boulevard Cottage. They're the same property.
Oh,
Heritage.
huh.
It's good.
That's good, I can live that.
You're okay with the Dormant Point residences remaining in
Think
there?
about that, because I'm not sure what that
Okay.
Yeah, because they're not in Crippen.
Are we doing this including but not limited to?
Could we, what about just being such a,
such as.
The baseball field alone, I guess.
But the nice thing about the Heritage Commission recommending like Davies Orchard, the Seaside Cottage, or general stores, like those are all distinctly
yeah,
buildings that have heritage value, so it's like a very logical
yeah.
referral.
I think the baseball field has that, what do you call it? Cultural heritage or invisible, but I don't know that putting a DPA on. Like, what if they want to put up a scoreboard or something? Like, that's not very nice, guys.
It needs to have a pitch roof.
Who owns it? Well, does the municipality own the gravel parking lot that fronts the baseball field?
We manage it.
You manage it. But is that in the guidelines area? So someone can't build a 3-story box?
They would need to get a development permit.
Yeah. Blocking the field, right? Yeah.
It's village. the village area, so like near the village, seen by the village, can see the village, just the village.
The
Okay.
proximate village areas.
Just village? Okay.
Okay. Are you ready? For a motion? I don't want to rush us, but but it is 2:05.
Yeah, let's go.
Did
Um,
Kathy want to read it?
Sure. That the Heritage Commission recommend that council include consideration of expanding the boundary of the Snug Cove Development Permit Area as part of the official community plan review process to include the old general store, brackets the library, and the Boulevard Cottage and the village areas of Crippen Park, such as the Davies Orchard Cottages and the Seaside Cottage.
Okay. Discussion.
That bridgey thing over the lagoon isn't in the village boundary, so that doesn't count, right?
We could, it will,
The causeway is including the.
yeah,
Just keep it on your-
actually, yeah, we should include the causeway. Everything up into including the bridge, I believe is in, looking at the bow map, is in Crippen Park, and everything beyond that, and where it's Granny's Beach and up the hill, whatever is Muni.
Privately owned. We have a trail right of way.
You have a trail road, even from, so it's privately owned from the far end of the Causeway Bridge,
Yeah,
or the benches and whatever, that's private?
that's private and.
Right of way. Ah,
Well, we had one that expired. We had it- expired. Well, that's looking.
all is revealed. Okay, so I'm gonna move to a motion unless someone has a burning comment or point to make. Okay, thank you.
And the causeway
Okay.
been added,
Okay,
right?
move to adopt those, recommend that recommendation. Let's go. Okay, who's mover? Melissa and Helen, second. All in favor? Carrie. Guess you don't have to say unanimously.
You're gonna,
Okay. So, thank you, Daniel, for that. And I think you're staying, maybe you can stay for the, yeah, on the, report. So, go back to the, maybe, what's next on the agenda? I've got
we have, sorry,
Oh, here we have.
The Resort
Orchard
Heritage Inspection.
Okay, so I don't know if you saw the email, Daniel, gave me the heads up this morning that Chelsea cannot attend today after all, even though we changed the commission date. So the suggestion is that we could defer it, although we could have some, I did spend some time drafting some motions regarding the report that we could maybe not spend a lot of time on, but quickly review, and if anybody has some strong views on it, so that we maybe further along for when we do. I don't think we want to approve any recommendations until we've had a chance to speak to the consultants, which will probably be September, October, but we want to delay them sending us a final version, because one of the recommendations in there is to ask the consultant to add content they suggested that they could, which is any missing bylaws, like a heritage protection bylaw. And once they've sent us the final version, the game is up, right? So we would want to do that. And so, and if they say, well, there's no way, we didn't really, we've used up all our resources on doing this report, we're not going to add any more content, then we would just simply take the resolution to ask them to do that out. So we're not ready to approve resolutions, but I could do a screen share what we have, just to give people an idea of what I am thinking about. So so here we are, and then I will screen share this.
Ask a question.
Yes.
We're not forgetting that when Don did that report for us way back when, that included a bunch of bylaw suggestions.
I don't think so. I read it just the other day and I didn't see bylaw suggestions in there. And if we miss them, I guess they'll tell us. We can ask them, did you get in your 60-page report, is there something we missed on recommendations? Missing stuff. So here, okay, so, there you go. So, I will read these because I wrote them. The Luxton report, so this is the whereas section, which gives the background. Make it bigger?
Yeah, bottom right.
Yeah. Okay. Not better? Bigger?
Yeah, please.
The Luxon report provides a number of conclusions and recommendations. Section 5.6, page 59. So that's these are statements of fact. Concerns remain about the dismantling of the fireplace from cottage 14 occurred well before the heritage inspection in brackets, and the potential loss of historic blue bricks produced on Bowen Island. At a commission meeting in fall 2023, a representative from Luxon and Associates indicated the municipality may wish to consider adoption of heritage protection tools, such as a heritage protection bylaw. The representative suggested that the report could include recommendations on missing bylaws or other tools that can be adopted to facilitate protection of heritage sites. Commission members were disappointed the suggested content was not included in the draft report submitted by the heritage consultants. Research and preparation of heritage protection tools, such as a heritage protection bylaw, is not in Council's 2024 strategic plan. And staff have advised that, this is and have cycle guidelines. I'm going to take that out because we dealt with that separately. Oh no, that could be relevant though. I have advised that our guidelines are undergoing review and update that would include a heritage element that could enable discretionary approval of heritage assets. So that's what we just talked about. But it's part of heritage protection tools generally. So then we move to recommendations based on the whereas clauses. 1, the council adopt the Luxton report's actions that could be considered for future conservation projects involving sites listed in the Community Heritage Register, specifically page 59. And so what I've done is taken verbatim, just lifted from their recommendations on page 59, the actions that they list. So rather than trying to paraphrase them as I did in the previous version, I've just done them for verbatim. And so what they say is production of a document detailing the condition intended. This is for applicants coming forward. Document detailing the condition, intended conservation approach, and proposed interventions to character defining elements identified in the statement of significance. B, interventions clearly detailed on permit drawings. C, if possible, review of proposed interventions by municipal staff familiar with Parks Canada's standards and guidelines for conservation of historical places in Canada. And D, if within the purview of the responsibility of the Bowen Island Heritage Commission, review of drawings and supporting documents relating to interventions to character defining elements for properties listed on the Community Heritage Register, or detailed summary provided to the Commission of interventions to CDEs for their information. So those are basically the recommendations from the report that we would ask council to adopt. There's more. E, if unforeseen site conditions warrant a change in conservation approach or level of intervention, notification be given to appropriate municipal staff of the need to make such a change for information and tracking purposes. And F, for those projects which may include a site listed on the Community Heritage Register, recommend notification be provided at the completion of the project that, if deemed appropriate by municipal staff, verification be provided to the municipality that conservation work was completed as laid out in permit document. And then the other recommendations were that additional tools, such as establishment of a development permit area, be considered to ensure that an application related to the Davies Heritage Orchard or other heritage assets would be referred to the Heritage Commission. 3, that the consultants be requested to deliver in its final report a section that includes recommendations on missing bylaws or other tools that could be adopted by council to facilitate protection of heritage sites. This one we would take out if they said no way. But if they say they would do this, this would really move forward the work of the commission rather than us having to do all of the research and figure it out on our own and contact other municipalities to see what they have, et cetera. Because we don't even know what we're missing. So, you know, that's going to be a piece of work if we don't have a foundation for it. 4, the council consider including the preparation and adoption of any missing bylaws and other heritage incentive tools with input as needed from the commission as part of council's 2025 strategic plan. We know we have staff resources to do that. And that 5, that council consider requesting Metro Vancouver Parks to confirm if the historic blue bricks from the fireplace in Cottage 14 are still in its possession. And if so, to properly store the materials until an appropriate community use or location can be identified and needs to come out. So, and that's part, I hadn't originally had that section 5 in there, but after a conversation with Judy Getty, it was thought that something would still be useful. So that is, so those are the kind of draft. And, you know, we could spend a long time going over them today, but I think we'll probably be drafting them at our next meeting. But if anything really jumps out, it would be worth having some discussion on that. And also with Daniel, if there's anything there that causes any concern.
Are those recommendations supposed to replace these that are in the agenda?
Yeah, I've worked a lot on them since I think they're better. Yeah.
I guess it was, I wish you back sort of what the mechanism is for like sort of those requirements for sites in the community heritage register. In terms of. You know, seeing that level of detail in an application and like referral to the Heritage Commission to review it.
Yeah, I guess it would be both. And I guess it would also involve, I think part of the recommendation was that staff knowledgeable with, you know, the standards for conservation of heritage places in Canada be either on staff or retain the services of consultant who would review something like that, especially for major, you know, major applications that might come in, like, yeah.
Yeah, I think just because our point has always been, we feel that we need an additional, you know, some form of bylaw that would justify some different approach for sites on the heritage register. Right, that is the like heritage protection bylaw or whatever it may be, that there's a step, even, you know, if there's a bylaw for sites on the heritage register that specifies certain things, then there's justification for staff to not issue a permit that meets
Right.
applicable zoning and applicable building code steps.
Yeah, there have been junctures where I've raised the issue of, you know, there are, you know, what else do we need in order to actualize what the act allows us to do? And sometimes a kind of a flip response was given, oh, well, you know, all incentives and, you know, all the things that we can do are all listed in the act, so they're there for us to use. But it's sounding like if you don't have a bylaw that tells staff what to do, how to use them or when to use them or whatever, they won't get used. So we think we have all of these tools, but we don't have the lock to unlock the box. You know, the toolkit, if the analogy is correct. Is that kind of what the problem is?
Yeah, like so it's looking at like the Local Government Act has a section on withholding of approvals. It's about can withhold issuance of approval for something that would cause an alteration to, and one of them is like properties identified as a heritage property and community heritage register, right? But it's specifically, it's like a local government may by bylaw do these things. And then as a bylaw may establish restrictions, limits, or conditions on the power or duty to withhold approvals.
So this wouldn't be a bylaw that you would enact every time an application came in. This would be a general bylaw that would allow, an umbrella bylaw that would allow you to do stuff. Because you can't just pick an incentive off the shelf or something you need.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we would have a, you know, a heritage protection bylaw that said if you're on the heritage register, there's whatever it's done. And so it would apply to all properties on the heritage register. But then essentially that's the discussion about, you know, what's discretionary versus what's like mandatory. And our understanding is always, you know, if there are no other restrictions on the property, so it's not a development permit area, let's say it's not whatever else, and they apply for a building permit, they meet the code, they meet the zoning, they get the bylaw. Or they get the permit. Or similarly, if somebody came for a demolition permit and we said, well, it's on the heritage register, if there's no other thing, you know, it's like, it's by bylaw that you can do it. Now, there's sort of elements of like heritage inspection provisions and like emergency steps, but otherwise it's like, you know, the powers in the local government act say local government made by bylaw. They're okay, well, you can do it, but you need a bylaw to do it.
Right.
There's nothing like wrong with it. It's just you need to have a bylaw.
Right. So an example, you gave an example of being able to withhold development permission. Local Government Act has a provision allowing municipalities to withhold permission. But just because it's there as a tool, it doesn't mean you're allowed to pick up the tool. The bylaw is what allows you to pick up the tool.
Yeah.
Got it. That's clear to everybody
Pick
around the
up the
table.
tool metaphor.
Yeah, I know. That's a metaphor. There's the tool on the shelf. I can't pick it up. I don't have a bylaw. So, yeah, so that's really key because we could find ourselves, you know, hamstrung. It's called sense of security, right?
And I think that there's kind of, hence why there's like almost the two things. So one avenue is, well, if we say, in our snow code design guidelines, we adopt the revisions, we'll have heritage guidelines in it. And if the map is expanded to include additional properties that are on the heritage register, then that would be one way that would trigger some of these recommendations.
Is it adopted as a bylaw, the guidelines? It's not.
Yes, they will be adopted into the land use bylaw.
Right.
But they would be different than, I guess, than a heritage protection bylaw, which would just be applying to sites in the community heritage register. And, you know, we'd have to look at, I would be bringing examples of like, these are what other communities do for these bylaws. I'm not super familiar with sort of what extent they do, but that would essentially be another to take.
One quick question I had, and maybe I'll email you separately. One idea was, let's say we identify 80 inventory sites across the island. Presumably you could, the council could adopt by bylaw 80 development permit areas, separate little around each site. But is that something that would be feasible? And if one was doing that, one might as well just be adding those to the register because you're creating you know, some level of infringement on property right. So what would be the point?
Yeah, like I think, so development permit has to have a map in the OCP, so it'd be like an official community plan amendment, which is like a larger amendment. And then the other thing is like, there's a list of things you can do for development permit areas. So one is like, you can establish objectives for the form and character of commercial, industrial, multifamily, residential development, which is what we're doing for Snow Cove. There's not a development permit area that's like just specific to heritage elements. So if you're saying, well, we care about the form and character of development in these scattered 80 sites across Bowen. You know, I don't know, we need like a legal review, but I start to get nervous that somebody would challenge and say, you're not really caring about the form and character of multifamily residential development across Bowen. You're worried about like heritage elements. You should do a heritage bylaw. That's what those provisions are for. Go.
Good. To put that to rest. Yeah. So just any other comments about the draft resolutions? Not to spend a lot of time hand wringing over them, but we'll do that next meeting after the meeting with the consultant. But anything else? Okay.
Do
Thank
people
you.
want to provide comments by email maybe? send them around. I've got an old version of what you read out. Maybe you want to send it to me via
Yeah.
the hc@bimbc.ca.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Red pen it
So
down.
everybody can see it. Yeah. Yeah, always sufficient to have stuff done and move forward at meetings, and then we're much closer to where we want to be in terms of resolutions by the time we're meeting again. So always good to save time. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this. And now we're back to okay. David Orchard, going down to subcommittee reports. And so the inventory subcommittee, I stepped up as chair, at least for now, chair of the inventory subcommittee. And Owen basically graciously agreed to take notes at our meetings. And so
Thank you, Owen.
and so we have some notes and just really very, very high level. We talked about possibly a 20-year cutoff because it may not be strict, but hard to know whether something has value if it's built yesterday.
The notes aren't on the screen.
No, they're not. I could share those. I was just being lazy and thought I'd just read them out. But not all of them, but just really highlights. So if people want to see the note, yeah, so I can read them. Pardon?
Just read it.
Just read it, yeah. And one of the considerations was we should probably look at categories. It's good practice. For example, we could divide categories into archaeological, architectural, historic, and artistic. And then I'm doing in the background, I'm doing work on this, and I'm thinking we might want to change the terms so we can have abbreviations that aren't like AAA. There's 3 A's there. So what we might want to have is, AR for architectural, ST for structural, perhaps H for historic, and then maybe C for cultural, because that would include artistic. And then we've got a good letter grade. What I've done is I've adapted the tracker that was initially started in 2021, and taken off all the register sites and added a whole bunch of columns. And maybe I will, I'll screen share that in a minute. And we can also, the other good idea was that we look at neighborhoods. Because Bowen is an idea, a community of communities, an island of communities, neighborhoods, and areas. And so the question will be, how do we cut it? Because there could be up to 40 or 50 different neighborhoods or areas we could identify, which gets more complicated. Or we could lump some areas together and for sorting purposes. And so I created a column that includes areas. And so you can sort by column in Excel. So we can slice and dice the inventory however way we want to look at it. So if we want to look at by area, if you want to look by, there's a column for type. So this is what I was just talking about. And I've also added a category for use category. So this would be something like, is it residential? Is it institutional? Is it industrial? Is it agricultural? And we can play with those categories as well. But then we could sort by that column. And everything's going to show us what comes up in each level. So make it easier to identify what we want to do. And then that saves us having to decide how we want to organize it. We just sort by however we need to organize it in the moment. And there'll also be headings for the site description, of course, but also the current owner, and for mailing address and contact information, email, telephone of owners when we can get it, so that we can contact owners for permission to go on site, take photographs, meet with them, talk to them as is possible. And there'll also be a column for comments as well. So things that don't fit in otherwise.
And so we're not going to sweat that too much. We probably want to find a way to deal with landscapes and other cultural assets. Basically, we want to look at everything. This is exciting. This is the first time on Bowen Island, as far as I know, that we have looked to identify everything that's of historic heritage, cultural interest on the island and comprehensively put it in one place. Whether or not it goes onto the register, some sites are, but at least we know it's there. And so right now, we had an amazing brainstorming meeting at the archives last week, and I think something like 65 buildings or 85 or something we had on the list. Buildings, sites, areas, mostly buildings, but there are things that may not have buildings. So there's a lot of work that's going to come out of it. It's extremely ambitious, and so we just have to cut out pieces that we can chew. Because we're all volunteers. So all of these sites, I was busily typing away on the tracker and couldn't get everything, and I think I'm missing stuff. So I'll be reaching out to everybody with semi-finalized versions so that you can add information and stuff that's missing. So I'll really appreciate the subcommittee members to do that. And ideally, the inventory will be incorporated into BOMAP for the public facing version. So we're looking at a GIS application of the inventory that would be compatible with BOMAP and the municipality's addressing system. So Owen has taken on talking to the staff about how we ensure that our GIS data and platform is compatible with what the city uses, because ultimately it can be a layer in the or series of layers in BOMAP. So that's really exciting. It'll be really easy to find things on a map. And then we just need to talk about how we're going to research, what are the best ways in our next meeting. We're going to go through maps and we're going to figure out how best ways to build the inventory, how to research what's out there and how to find people. So we figure that looking by neighborhood will be really useful also to help get people excited about helping us map and identify what's on the island, because people love their neighborhood, they love their community. And so if we engage people on a community by community basis, that might help us find out things that we wouldn't know otherwise. So, and we also recognize that this is not something that we're going to be able to do in a linear fashion. We're not going to identify sites. Now we've identified them all. Now we're going to go into doing more research. And then next step, it's going to be a messy kind of thing. People are going to be researching. Other people are going to be going on looking, finding things, taking pictures. Other people are going to be researching stuff we already have. Yeah, we want this to be something that's a lot of fun for the subcommittee members, and people are going to do what they really want to do, and we'll move forward in that basis. So anyway, and the next step is to look at mapping to see what we can find through mapping. And yeah, we're looking at the next meeting is probably, if we can, sometime between August 10th and August 20th for another subcommittee meeting. And so we would have results to report back at the next commission meeting. It's hoped that our subcommittee meeting can happen generally a few weeks before mission meeting, so that we have stuff to report that's fairly fresh. So that's the intention. Any questions about the inventory subcommittee and the work it's doing?
Does anyone know who maintains BOMAP? Do they have an email address?
I mean, we do. We have a mapping. We contract a mapping company who hosts the layers, and then theoretically different staff member update different layers.
So who would be the best person for Owen to contact?
I've just got two questions about what UTM it uses and what sort of format the date that we should start producing the data in so that it can be integrated in? Do you know who I could talk to?
Sure, if you email me, I can send it to Chartwell is the company we use.
Okay.
And yeah, and then I just send it on to them and say, this is what you want. Yeah.
Is this, like, do we need council direction to include the heritage map?
Or,
It's just that's the commission's suggestion and intention. And if we need council to adopt, to agree to a motion to adopt it, I guess we would have to do that, but it's kind of premature. We're not ready for that anyway.
Okay.
yeah, I think we're okay at this. I hear, the one thought I had just on the list that you have now, it's great, was more the flag for, number 27 was First Nations heritage. And I'll say, like, we have access to a provincial database called RAD, which is something archaeological, something database. And to have access to that, we have to sign like essentially a non-disclosure agreement. So we can't display it, we can't map it on BOMAP. But we use that to review, and they basically have two data sets, they're like archaeological sites, and they have a buffer. Actually, no, I created the buffer around them. And then we, there's like a notification letter that we have. So when we review like a building permit, we review and make sure it's not in a RAD site or a buffer site. And then we send the letter to as part of our building permit review and say either you're in the area, you are adjacent to it, or you're not within the area. That we're not able to like share the map. There is a system online the province has where you can like enter your address and they'll tell you if you're in an area or not. So I know in the past, like the Islands Trust has looked at trying to map, heritage archaeological sites. Essentially the same roadblock is like, it's not something the province is willing to let people display. So just in terms of that one, I had sort of this flag of like, one, we do already check, but we're not able to display it. And then occasionally, yeah, you run into issues with people because they will have prior payments. So you have to proactively go to the site and enter your address, and they would tell you.
So my takeaway is some sites just won't be visible. to the public.
Yeah, exactly. It's like archaeological site. It wouldn't be publicly mapping that.
So there'd be a disclaimer.
Yeah, exactly.
Would an owner be unaware of an archaeological site on its property? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's typically, I mean, the places that are mapped on Bowen are kind of logical, like a lot of them are logical, like knitted sites, right? They're on a shore and their shell fragments, well, so you probably.
That would be obvious, but.
Yeah.
But there's also like culturally modified trees would be another. Yeah.
And then I'm aware too, like, when I look at the map, I see, things are spotted along the shoreline. And then in some instances where, we've required archaeological assessments as part of subdivisions. So I know we had discussions like with the Cape Frederick Curtis subdivision, they did an archaeological assessment, they found sites there, we had covenants on them and they're now on the RAD database. There's lots of places on Bowen where, that's never been done. And it was subdivided in the 20s and there's individual lots, so I don't know what exists.
I guess the reason is to prevent those sites from being desecrated.
That's the fear. That's why the province restricts sort of, public mapping of it, because that's the fear is that then people will go and be like, oh, it's really fun.
But we could still map them. They would just be suppressed, right?
Could you show them to us?
I'm not allowed to show them that, like, basically, I'm not allowed to show them to anyone who's not a, like, Bowen staff, I think is my.
Well, we're chopped liver, obviously.
Yes.
Okay.
But I think then it's like, the way the act divides it, like pre-1846 and so I think anything, we're thinking about like built heritage on Bowen, I think that would be fine to include, we'd include an inventory map and we would, if it's one of the archaeological sites.
If poverty exists, we should just exclude that from our remit. Because I know of a couple of sites that I found, but it's probably 1% of what's on that list. So if we can't do a complete job, there's no point in doing it all.
Just we have archaeology as a column, but we just wouldn't include First Nation sites.
Right.
in it.
1842.
I guess, yes, the same with that in terms of the culturally modified trees, it'd probably be us wanting to like work with the Squamish,
Yes.
to see, okay, what would they like to have?
Yeah.
Shown or not.
It already exists. There's no point in putting up.
Yeah.
All right. So just, while this was happening, I screen share, I thought people like to take a look at the kind of the list that we hammered out. It's not totally complete, but as you can see, I was surprised. We're up to 60, 64 sites on this list. I know I missed a few as well. I just couldn't type fast enough. And having never learned how to type because I grew up in that era. And then we've got along the very top at the gray column 1, see site name, public or private, category, in other words, archaeological, structural, historic, cultural, and then column E would be use type, and I've got like RS to be residential, AG would be agricultural, institutional, industrial, recreational. There might be more. We'll probably need a footnote to give the abbreviations so we don't have to make the column so wide. But this is something we'll need to talk about at the commission. I'm just throwing out some potential categories, and we'll probably want to discuss what those final categories should be. And also there'll be a question of like, if something falls in more than one category, should it, or what's the process for determining, is something residential or something agricultural, Paul's Farm, for example, or can something have more than one category? And then there's locations, and so here's like the neighborhood locations. And again, I'm just basing on my knowledge, I'm starting to throw in neighborhood or community titles, but we're probably also going to want to sit down and just say, okay, what is the most appropriate accepted name for this location? And maybe we should, and should we be clustering some into one name, because how many do we want to have? So that's a discussion that we're going to have. And then address, and hopefully the address column, when we can actually get street addresses for things, hopefully we can coordinate that with the addressing system the city has. So we don't have two different sets of addresses, right? For something. And then owners, mailing address. I should say that some of these may be suppressed in public versions. Mailing address is one thing, but the email contacts, contact lists, even comments, these are in our working document, because we'll need that information for contacting owners and getting permissions and things like that. But so those wouldn't be released to the public, obviously for privacy reasons. So, but that's kind of where we're at, just to give people a flavor of we got going. Any questions? All right, stop sharing. And back to the
Can you send
agenda.
me that document? Would you please?
I will definitely.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm going to work on it before I send it to you. I'll still need some work. I'll send you also. And the intention is that, and this is coming up in a later section, that versions from time to time be adopted by council by resolution of the commission. So even the inventory would have some status. So, but we'll get into that. Okay, so the next, then this program and education subcommittee, but I don't believe that committee is met or has a chair or whatever. So that's to come. Section 5 updates, Old General Store 100-year anniversary event update. Well, what part of the good news is Shirley Renchus has agreed to lend costumes, 1920s costumes. For
Oh,
the
yeah.
That's really great. That just came up in an email today or yesterday. And maybe I'll ask Kathy how things are going with, there was the GoFundMe campaign to bring David.
Well, it didn't reach, the original target, but made, you bring it up.
To bring out.
Yeah.
And David was, for commission members who don't know.
David and others,
Others.
David and Ellen. dedicated people who are responsible for saving the old dental store and also for the creation of the park. And probably David is the last standing person that was on the finance committee.
And the hope is he will give a speech of some kind.
He will no doubt give a speech, he will probably dance and sing and plays, but he's got a song that he wants to sing, so yeah, he will be more than happy.
Any other updates from that committee? I mean, I know a bunch of us are on that committee. Tina Nielsen, the library's coordinating. One thing that she did say that we need volunteers. I mean, there's some items internally that I think she needs volunteers for us to sign up to, but I think we're going to need volunteers for the day of. So that's August the 10th from 12 to 3. So if other members on the commission or people they know might be interested in volunteering for a very fun day, please let Tina know. Okay, anything else on that one? Library building repair, 6.2 library building repair update, and that's Drew.
I just touch base down right before this. I wasn't aware of the rest of the looking at that. So
Sorry.
Sorry.
Tag your in.
Sorry, and I just plunked your name on there.
I'll say that, so council discussed it at their strategic planning session, which was in June, maybe. And the council resolution from that was that council directs staff to obtain a preliminary assessment and estimated cost to repair the damage to the beams on the library building from a local contractor and report back to the Heritage Commission. That was the action that's taken. I don't know, and so that was assigned to our director of engineering. So I don't have an update from him, but the direction is to report back to the Heritage Commission.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm guessing it would be premature to propose a resolution that council add funding for the repair to the old general store in its 2025 strategic plan.
It's probably premature, like if the council direction is to get assessment and estimated cost, then I guess that would be like that's what council did, as their first step, and then they would know, okay, how much is it?
Right, and then it will determine what strategic plan it might fall under.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, any other comments or questions on that from commission members? Okay, thank you, Daniel. 6.3 Japanese Memorial Project update. Just one line from me, well, maybe I'll get Kathy to announce. The chair talks too much. We were successful in getting the grant, $150,000 grant from the Japanese Canadian Legacy Society. So project is moving forward.
So how much is the grant?
$150,000. And the project will unfold over the next few years, with the end date being
I think it's 5.
2025.
Yeah, we've got a year and a half.
Yeah,
Not as long as we have.
with a big public unveiling somewhere in the fall of 2025. So,
Can you fill me in? I don't know anything about
What's the project and
okay, so the under John Horgan, under his premiership, part of the whole Japanese redress initiative, there's a federal initiative and provincial initiative. The provincial government set aside, I'm not remembering the total figure, but it's in the tens of millions at least of dollars for projects across BC, for legacy projects.
Yeah.
In particular related to what happened in 1942 with the Exclusion Act and all of that. And and a bunch of different categories, including cultural and historical, but some of them include the creation of memorial sites. So our project is the creation of a memorial site, and the proposed site is in Sandy Beach. And
And there are two alternate locations, one kind of around where the picnic table and the old boat launch is, and the other is to the left of that and down slope, kind of overlooking the water, which would be more contemplative. And so site analysis still needs to be done in order to determine what's probably the best site. And then design work has to be done, and historical research needs to be done, and contacting other people with connections to the island to find out the history. I'm having a lot.
What is this thing? What's it gonna be?
Well, it's going to be a structure, and maybe some landscape around it, and it's going to, you know, in some ways exemplify, you know, the rift that happened in 1942, but also looking forward to the future. And there's a reconciliation aspect of that as well. And even involving the youngest generations of Japanese citizens.
Families that were here on the island.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, and actually Ron Cato, who's a particular Japanese background, has a connection to the island. His father drowned off Bowen Island working in the industry. But anyway, he's an architect and retired architect, and he's helping us out with the design side of things. So, all very exciting. Originally, we were hoping to rebuild the old Humpy Japanese style bridge at Bridal Veil Falls. But Metro came back and said, no way, it's over Salmonberry Creek. And even though they have their own bridges over the same Salmonberry Creek, well, we're not going to do that. So anyway, don't get me going.
We have a meeting in here at 3:00.
So business arising from the minutes, bylaws, and legislative tools. I think we can do this in 10 minutes, Daniel. We've had some minutes back and meetings back and forth. I'm going to stop sharing because I'm going to share the notes that I made up based report on municipal status. There is. And share. Is. And maybe we have time to read through it very quickly, or Drew, or you know, Daniel, do you want to make any prefatory? Okay, I'll go through very quickly. What this does is addresses concerns of commission members that it's unlikely that we're going to be able to, or even would want to register all of the historic heritage sites on the islands, particularly if they're private property. Particularly as there may be, you know, reasons people would not want to list their property. Some might be amenable, but probably the majority might not. And how do we, and as we're developing this list of sites, how do we give them some kind of profile that would allow them some kind of protection, or at least some form of public light of day, looking for a word, that would give them the public some knowledge of them, and so that may encourage their preservation. So in 2021, council adopted the first register, included 10 initial heritage sites, all publicly owned. Parks, BIM, provincial cannot except the Cenotaph, which is the lead USSC, and Higgitt's Cabin, which is the museum and archives. But the Heritage Strategic Plan, Initiative 8, and Heritage Commission's Council adopted 2024 work plan include further research on potential heritage assets throughout the island. Some of them aren't going to be, a lot of them are going to be on private property. A key principle articulated in the Strat Plan is the informed consent of property owners for potential inclusion of heritage assets in the register. Informed consent would include direct consultation with property owners about all aspects of heritage register listing. So some owners might
agree to listing their property and be excited about that. Benefit through incentives, relaxations, grant funding. But the majority of owners may decline listing. So, so sites adopted by council on the register would be flagged in Bowen Island Municipality staff's permit review list, allowing for staff action in case a property owner comes forward with an application, demolition, development permit, rezoning, whatever. But what we're proposing, and the Heritage Strategic Plan proposes it, is creation of this informal heritage listing we've been talking about. And the purpose would be to expand knowledge of heritage assets throughout the island as a working document, inventory heritage assets for potential future inclusion in the register, subject to owner consent, and provide a workable alternative or precursor to inclusion on the register. But a key question raised by commission members is what protection can be afforded non-registered sites? How can BIM staff even be aware of heritage assets that are not listed on the register, therefore not listed in their database? So the commission agreed to undertake a discussion with BIM staff, and I've had that back and forth with Daniel and with Drew, whether or not non-registered heritage assets could be in some way flagged in the permit review list, so that in the event an application was received for that address, staff would be aware the site that might have heritage value and at least engage in a discussion with the property owner. So the outcome of this is, while staff are able to flag non-registered properties in the BIM permit review list, staff generally have no discretionary powers in relation to building permits, which comprise by far the majority of applications received by the municipality. A small minority of applications, less than 20%, are discretionary, which would allow some review. And that's, for example, applications for properties and development permit areas. And the real number is more like 10% because for stream and watershed protection, there's no heritage review capability. So even if all heritage inventory sites were flagged on the permit review list, fewer than 20% of the sites would be actionable by staff. And again, mostly those in development permit areas. However, we have been advised about the SNUG Code design guidelines undergoing review, so we had that discussion earlier on. Staff have indicated they do not believe it is appropriate to approach owners of properties in cases where there could be no discretionary review, because there would be no legal basis for doing so, and because the owners and purchasers of properties not on the register would have no knowledge of an informal listing, not evidenced on land title. So they could say, I purchased this property, I had no idea there was some heritage thing attached to it. It's not on the register, it's not on land title. As an alternative to registered listing, the proposed heritage inventory, as amended by the commission from time to time, could be posted on the commission's website, where it would serve as a public record of the list of potential heritage assets. The Heritage Commission would approve recommendations to adopt the list, and subsequently any additions, and the commission website would be updated accordingly. Again, I guess through adoption, recommendation of the commission and adoption by council. So updates would be posted, approved, and then posted periodically if changes were made. So in conclusion, short of listing heritage assets in the register, the commission will share the inventory list as it evolves from time to time with BIM staff for distribution to appropriate departments. BIM staff will update their permit review list to include heritage inventory listings adopted by the commission on the mutual understanding that only a small proportion of cases with discretionary review can be actioned in any way. Future discussion could involve expanding areas with discretionary review through additional development permit areas. On an ongoing basis, as the heritage inventory sites are researched and documented, each site would have similar content to sites formally listed on the register, i.e. statements of significance, etc., so that BIM staff and future heritage commissions have the information they need to advise council regarding the value of a heritage asset and to ensure that inventory sites are more or less register ready for potential inclusion as opportunities may arise in the future. The heritage inventory and updates will be adopted by the commission by resolution to provide a public record of the inventory. The most current list will be posted and maintained on the Heritage Commission website. So that's basically the skinny on
back and forth. Just, Daniel, did I get anything? I make sure I got everything right with that. If there's anything I got that was slightly off, we could probably work on that offline, but does it look more or less?
Yeah, I think it builds on like other discussions we've had at this meeting about, you know, development permanent area options, heritage inventory. Hopefully we're building to the same place.
I feel like we have to go because there's a meeting, but I do have a question.
Yeah, and we don't need to adopt this, I don't think. This is just for information purposes because there were questions of council, yes.
Should I leave my question for another time? Like, I feel like it's 3:00 and I think Steph said there's a meeting.
Okay. So probably take longer than 30 seconds. Okay.
Let me ask you a question. So.
Everybody.
It's a staff meeting.
Steph, okay, Steph just gave you permission.
My question is basically, like, from what I'm reading in this, this is about what staff have power to enforce, but I would have thought that 90% of heritage interventions would be offering something rather than enforcing something, and that's what happened with Moonwings. That there was an offer of a heritage revitalization agreement.
Yeah.
So then, that seems to me that having the inventory is kind of handy.
Yes, I would agree. And I think, I mean, in that case, it's like the applicant is coming for a variance.
Right.
And so
It's like,
hence,
yeah,
yeah, so hence, you know, but so having some sort of list that, you know, if we have an inventory, has addresses, it's on the Heritage Commission website. Then we can point to people and be like, hey, did you know?
yeah.
There's heritage, you know,
that potentially you could.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. So I think it's, yeah, very helpful. And then it allows us to open that box of like, here are incentives. that we
Yeah,
have.
and without the list, then,
Yeah.
The difference is that the owner doesn't come forward asking for some kind of relaxation. It doesn't open the door
Yeah.
to saying anything more. So we have this list. The owner doesn't say anything, doesn't ask us for anything. It's not, there's no discretion in a building permit, for example. So we can't, my understanding from you, Daniel, is we basically handcuffed in that kind of a situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, it's always hard. It's like, well, if we had the inventory, maybe it gives us the ability to sort of say, somebody says, I'm going to demolish and build a new thing. And we can say, oh, did you know you're on this
This
list?
is what we were hoping.
Right? If you do this, but it's just, I don't know, like at that point, it's like, we can't refer to Heritage Commission. And I don't think we could do more than have like that line, I think.
At least if
it's
we
like,
do that.
we would say,
Yeah.
you know, did you know?
that's something.
Yeah.
You could consider, you actually, maybe you could get
Yeah.
another property you could build this as well,
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah.
if
Or
you
like-
wanted to.
Or it would be, you know, when we have our sort of pre-application meetings with people, where we typically will go through like, oh, you're in the DP area.
Right.
This is what this means. We would be
That's
saying,
something we have
no.
to know. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And then if they would benefit from a relaxation, for example, for setbacks or something like that, then in return for the setback, they would
Yeah.
agree to have their site listed on the register
Or density, right? Like,
Or density,
retain
right.
one building.
and build another. Right now, you're over the allowed density, right? And then it's a heritage revitalization agreement.
Or accessing the building permit relaxations.
Exactly. And then once you're on the inventory, then maybe you can get a grant, you know, for fixing the roof.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Maybe we'll think.
yeah, I mean, that's one, in fact, Maureen Nicholson initially, when she was on council, thought that the main reason for a heritage register would be to give municipal owned structures the ability to access grants to help maintain structures. It was limited to that, really, in some way.
Heritage piece.
Anyway, I think we're at the end of the agenda now, so I would, I believe that was the last item. So I guess I have, let's take one last look here. Yeah, that's it. No other business. So move to, I will move to adjourn. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great meeting. And I guess we're meeting quarterly. We're probably not meeting again until September or October. So we're gonna want to set up